Hey, we're live.
Yay, we made it.
We made it. We are here to answer writing questions today. Are you all excited?
Yes.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm Christopher Maselli. Who are each of you?
I'm Gena Maselli. Very glad to be here.
And I'm Rene Getteridge, the one non-Maselli.
That's right.
But they let me hang out.
That's right. Why don't we talk about what each of us writes? So I do a lot of marketing material. I do a lot of ghost writing. I've done children's books in the past. I do a lot of online digital marketing type stuff, and I help people also format and publish their books. So I do a lot of self-publishing now. That's been something I've gotten into lately. How about you, Gena?
I do a lot of nonfiction. I do a lot of magazine articles and online internet writing, as well as marketing writing as well. So yeah, online marketing scripts and that kind of thing as well. So just and even children's writing, young
Curriculum
adult
too.
writing, that kind of thing. So lots of different little
And
hats.
how about you, Renee?
So I write fiction. I have done a few nonfiction pieces, but mostly fiction. I also write screenplays. I used to actually many years ago I used to be a playwright, but I would not consider myself an expert in that area. But yeah, and I do blogs and articles and things. When you're a writer, you just kind of write, and people ask you if you can you write this, and sometimes you're just like, yeah, and then you go look up how to write it.
Yeah.
But I would consider my expertise in fiction and some nonfiction and that sort of thing, and screenplays.
Very cool. Okay, so we are broadcasting on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube right now. And so if you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, you can put any questions you might have about writing, publishing, selling your book, branding, anything like that that you want to talk about at all into the chat, and it'll show up here where we can see it. If you're on LinkedIn or Twitter, we won't see it live as we're going here, so you might want to jump to one of those channels. But if you're watching this at a later time, then you're set. You can just sit and enjoy. But to start off, as people are hopping on, I have a bunch of questions. You all excited to answer some questions today? You want to talk about writing?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's
sure.
important to point out before we get started in this that we come in here and you ask us what we write, and we all kind of go, well, I've written this and this and this and this. And that's because all of us have been in this for a really long time. We've been in this,
Long time.
each of us 20 years that we've been in the publishing world. So yeah, we're not just coming in going, yeah, well, I've got, just this. It's been kind of a lifelong pursuit for some of us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's been good. Has it been worth it?
White page is still terrifying. Even 20 years later,
Still
when you look at that white
terrifying.
page, it's still terrifying. So
Well, I love what you said there, Renee, about how, someone says, can you write this? And you say, sure. And then you go and look up how to do it. Because I have been there many times. What do I need to put in this? How do I need to write this? You want me to write a what? Okay. So
absolutely.
yeah, that's just part of the world too, figuring it
Yeah.
out.
Yes,
It's
it
true.
is.
And I don't know why it is that, even after having written for so long, it is still sometimes hard when you sit down to write. Writing is definitely a muscle and you become better at it. Like I know that I can write something in a lot less time than it used to take me for certain pieces because I've done it so much, right? I don't have to labor over it quite like I used to. But that said, there's still many times that I just feel stuck or feel like I'm starting over or wondering if I can finish something. And I guess that's just part of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is for me. I watched a documentary on Hans Zimmer, and he said every time he's the famous composer of movies, and he said every single time he sits down and it's almost like back to square one. Like he feels like, can I do this? Is this too big of a project? This is the time I'm going to fail. So I'm in, I guess, good company, but every time it feels like I have to get brave again And
I think that's such a big part of it though too. I've really been thinking about that, and I've been reading some on the fears that we have to overcome as writers. That fear that we know about the fear of the white page, the blank page, but there's also that fear that, is this going to be the time that I'm going to fail? Is this going to be the time that I'm going to be exposed as a fraud?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that I've fought so many years in my own head, that it's like, am I going to be able to pull this off? Am I going to be able to pull it out? And I just finished a big project here recently, and when the person first approached me with it, and this was a big project, I was just kind of smiling, going, sure, sure. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be like, we're hanging on. But then it comes together and it's this beautiful thing. And I just think that's interesting. The idea of these fears that we all have to overcome. You overcome them the first time you sit down to write, but you are still overcoming them the 100th time that you sit down to write. And so I think that's something that I've been just kind of contemplating lately, that there are those common fears that writers always deal with. So
Yep.
we're all working on it.
All right, so I'm ready to get us into the questions. Y'all ready?
Okay.
This first one, I think you're all gonna like. I already know what you're gonna say because I know you guys. But check this out. Okay, so this is from Suspicious Cat 981, and he or she posts: "Is editing really necessary? I've been kind of editing as I go, and I'm nearing the end of my full and completed manuscript. Basically, I'll write a chapter and then I look through it to see if it's all good, and then run it through Grammarly in case there are mistakes I missed. Do I really need to edit it all again? Only reason I'm asking is because I just do not want to." I like that question. What do y'all think?
I'm going to let you go. Go ahead, Rene. I'm going to let you answer this one first, because I want to hear your response.
Yeah, well, I would say absolutely you have to edit it, second, third, fourth, fifth time. I probably read this last script that I turned in, I bet I read over 10 times in the editing phase. You just have to read it over and over. It depends on the person, how good of an editor you are as you go. I don't particularly edit strongly as I'm writing. It just messes up my flow. So I sort of wait till the end. I'm also a seat of the pants writer, so I'm always going to have more edits at the end of my projects than probably an outliner will. But I would say definitely, if you want to be a professional writer beyond a hobbyist, if you want to be beyond a hobbyist, you're going to have to learn to edit. And the more you edit, the more you'll enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. I think the magic happens in the editing process. I think you get your idea down when you first write it, but you can really sharpen it. And when you go back over that, especially if you've let something sit for a while and you go back over it and you're reading it, it's just amazing how you have kind of those light bulb moments that come on when you're going through your manuscript and you realize, oh, I can do this, and it'll make it just 10 times better. Maybe it's something that you're tying together. If you're working on a book, something that you're tying together from later on in the book, that you have these callbacks and these tiebacks that you do. Or maybe you share a story that all of a sudden you're able to share it in a new, fresh way, or just a sharper way. So I say, not only do you need to edit, and if you hate to edit, then hire an editor for sure. Do not let your work go out without being edited, because it doesn't take much to undermine your credibility. Mm-hmm. And as a writer, especially if you are writing, maybe you're writing something, you work in a specific field and you're writing something for that field. If you are putting your heart and soul and your energy into it, you don't want someone to discount your professionalism or what you have to say because you have a mess of grammar, or you've got typos throughout it, or you've got, maybe you haven't just tightened everything up. And I think that will just undermine your credibility if you don't have your work edited. So I say not only edit yourself, but I am a big proponent, especially for larger pieces, of having another pair of eyes on it to edit it. And then I would even say, even after you edit, if you are having it formatted, go ahead and have it proofed at that point to make sure you catch any of those last minute typos.
Yeah, and I would just add to that that there are different types of editing, right? There's technical editing, there's editing for content. And when I edit, I'll usually go through my manuscripts looking for just one specific thing, right? Is the timeline right? And I'll edit for that. Do I have the characters? Am I keeping the characters in character? And I'll edit for that. Is the grammar good? And I'll edit for that. And I'll kind of do multiple passes based on different things because I just can't catch it all at once.
Mhm.
Good. Very good. Okay, this is kind of tied to the last one as far as editing goes. This one says, major rewrites, are they worth it? So I'm going to have to sum this up a little bit because it's kind of long. This is from Obligation No 6910. I've plotted a story that exists in both the distant past and the current world we live in. So it sounds like it must go back and forth or something. Now that I've been working on it, I realize I enjoy writing and reading the pieces centered in the past, but struggle to write believable and engaging pieces of what I consider the main story in the present. I'm wondering whether I should switch the story to a different world entirely or keep the current timeline back by a few hundred years. In other words, put the whole thing in the past. But either change means a lot of rewriting and plotting. Have you ever had a gargantuan gear shift in your own projects? And I would appreciate any insight on the value of rewriting, or should I just march forward? Right now, the task seems insurmountable, but also the only way I can save my story. Advise me, wise writers. Advise. Go. What do y'all think?
I'm going to let Rene take this one.
Well, I have done a giant rewrite, and almost for the same reason. So almost the exact same scenario. I was actually trying to tell some backstory. It was a novelization based on a movie that had a lot of flashbacks, and I was trying to match that as closely as I could to stay true to the movie. When the editors read it, I had the first instinct, this isn't working, but I went ahead and turned it into the publisher, and they were like, this isn't working. And I said, yeah, but I'd already been thinking of how to correct it and really just brought it into the present. It took a major rewrite. Now, I will say that my advice when you have a major rewrite is to start the manuscript completely over. Do not try to rewrite in the middle of what you already have. You can certainly copy and paste over, but you need to see it with fresh eyes. You need to enter into it with fresh perspective. And the only way you can do that is to start with a clean white page. It seems counterintuitive, but I promise you it will get you where you want to go faster than getting muddled into what's already there and trying to rework all that. A clean white page is like a blank canvas, and you'll be able to see even more clearly what you need to do to work your story out.
That's good. And I think I bet there's a lot of pieces from that original manuscript you can end up copying and pasting over. Yeah, so it's not like it'll feel like a completely rewrite, but really when you get into it, I bet it won't be as much as you think.
That's right. There's slots that you can save, but you won't even know what to save if you're all buried within your original story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. All right, this one's from One Day MVP. Okay. The title of this thread is Fear of Writing About Personal Experiences. I had an amazing year. I completely changed my life and feel the need to share. However, I'm really fearful of sharing my feelings personal story. I've actually always been this way. Will others judge me? Probably, but I don't care what strangers think. I'm scared of my current network, family, and work reading it. Has anyone else felt this way? And have you successfully shared a personal story journey or life story publicly? How did that go? Gena, what do you think?
Well, I have, because I did a book of did a devotion, a 365-day devotion that I co-wrote with a friend of mine, and a lot of the stories within it were personal stories. So I understand that fear and wondering, okay, is this person going to know I'm talking about them? is is this going to expose me as being, um, you know, it's going to be too vulnerable? And that's really only a question that that person can answer for themselves. Um, there are definitely some stories that I have chosen not to share because of who they might affect. And so I think that's a personal decision that you have to choose. And I would say, if you're really concerned about it, you may want to, if you're writing about family or you're writing about close friends, I would probably maybe approach some people beforehand, before that kind of thing came out, and get their perspective on it, if they think that it's a good idea or not, and then and gauge their reaction, because if they flip out on you, then that may be your answer. So,
See, and I say this is what pen names are for.
well, and there's that too. Yeah.
Or fiction. Yeah, write it as a fiction book, right?
There's an awful lot you can work out in life through fictional stories. And there's an awful lot to learn from fiction. So you don't necessarily have to tell the true story. You can tell a true story without telling the true story. You can be super raw and real about real life without having to tell your entire true story on the page with people's names. So, I always advocate that fiction is just as powerful of a teacher as nonfiction. So.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't think I have a lot of material that does have any personal stories for myself in it. I think I'm probably too guarded for that. But when I was thinking of some of my children's novels, like for middle graders, there are so many of those stories of things that actually happened to me when I was the age of the characters in those stories. I just made them happen with the main character, right? And I've actually used that if I've taught in schools. I've told the kids, that story that happened to me. They think that's the coolest thing ever. So yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Very good. All right. So next one. This is kind of like doing a Dear Abby, don't you think? It's just like
yes, Dear Abby
rapid fire questions here. All right. This is from Retro 3654. They say, I'm somewhat of a novice writer, although I've written many short stories and things like that, if that's of any relevance. Essentially, I like posting my chapters one at a time online somewhere to give feedback and how I might need to improve. However, I also want to be traditionally published, which I've heard is a no-go if anything you've written is posted online. Is there a middle of the road here? Is growing a following for posting online a viable option to make sales and get your stuff out there versus traditional publishing? It's a hobby for me, but I'm working essentially toward doing more than that. Or am I looking at this all wrong? Do you have any advice? Let me take this one just a second. I would say the rules have changed, and posting online is actually a way to build a following. And so I think that's totally fine if you want to do that. In fact, Amazon has come out with this new program for Kindles called Kindle Vella, which is essentially posting one chapter at a time for readers. And people pay by the chapter. So they'll pay like 99 cents to read chapter 1, or you might give that one away for free. And then they'll pay for chapter 2, chapter 3 if they want to continue with your story, because they've seen that that's what people are doing on a lot of online platforms. So I don't think there's anything wrong at all with that, with putting it out there. Now, if your material is rough enough that you feel like, oh, I need to get feedback just to make sure I'm writing well, you know, that you may not want to go through a program like Kindle Vella yet. But yeah, I think that's a good way to build a following. Do you all agree? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the rules have changed. I think that rule came out when the publishers were fearing the internet, right? Like they didn't know what was going to happen, how it would affect. Now the rule. So if you're doing well, we'll jump on that bandwagon and purchase all this from you. So yeah, I would say that all the rules have changed. And the ebook has changed everything. Web series is a big deal now in film. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's almost like the wild, wild west. You know, you'll hear one rule, don't ever do this. And then somebody will do it and be ultra successful. And then everything will change. So I think you do what you think is best for you. And, you know, try to get a following, as Gena said.
Yeah, that's good. This is a photo. This is from Ill Network 4376. How do I get through a boring chapter? Put boring in quotes. Sometimes there's a chapter that just feels boring, but you have to write it because it's just part of the story. Like an event that has to happen, but you just don't have the motivation to write it, if you know what I mean. Do you have any ideas? Any help would be appreciated.
Well, I'm going to, again, kick this one over to Rene, because I have been in her sessions and heard her talk about the entertainment value. And so I know that Rene's got a lot of insight on this one.
I do. There's no such thing as a boring chapter. So if your chapter's boring, then you're going to have to revisit why it's boring, what's making it boring. And, you know, you'll lose a reader in the middle of a book, even by one boring chapter. You know, there's a lot of competition out there, a lot of things to read, not just books, but everything on the internet is what you're competing with. So your job is to continue to be highly entertaining with every page that you're putting out there. So you do, you know, that's the challenge. If you're being bored by your own writing, that's your first flag. You know, if you're bored by your own writing, then your reader's definitely going to be bored, because we always have a higher opinion of what we're writing than everybody else will. You know, we'll lay something down and we'll be like, this is amazing. This is amazing. When you start getting feedback, it's like, well, it's not as amazing as I thought. So you're the first line of defense. If you're getting bored by your own work, then it's definitely a red flag for you, and easily correctable. You just have to work at it.
So can I ask a follow-up question to that, Rene? Could you, like, what are some things that someone might, like some questions that they should ask themselves? Because I'm sitting here thinking, if your chapter is boring and you're saying, but it has to be there, then there's something within it that you're wanting to communicate that then maybe you need to think about how you can communicate that differently in a more exciting way. But how can someone increase that entertainment and make it not? I mean, is there maybe some steps or something that someone could think about?
Well, I like to kill characters off. So
the character gets boring, you just get rid of them.
Yeah, somebody has to die here, and but usually
don't bore Rene, or she's right.
You're out of here.
She's writing you right.
Yeah, if you're boring parts towards the early part in Act 1 or early Act 2, you've really got a issue. Most of the time, what happens is people will run out of story around chapter 17 or 18 of a full-length book, and that's normal. It's called the sagging middle, and that's usually where you've basically run out of story or plot line. And one of the easy ways to fix that is to create conflict. In suspense, that's usually you could kill somebody off and create a whole new line of problems for everybody. In romantic comedy, you can introduce a new love interest. Whatever your genre is, you add to the conflict. Anytime you're just writing, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, if you're just dumping information in, unless the book is informational by nature, then you will have to rework it in some way.
So I know you're a pantser, right? You don't
Mm-hmm.
plot everything out ahead of time. You know the general idea of where you're going. But if you found something boring and you knew that, okay, I need to change this, I'm going to kill off a character.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the repercussions of that are going to be when you're writing, or do you just say, well, I'm going to have everyone deal with it and work my way through it? Like, or do you say, okay, I kind of need to figure out where I'm going to go with that then before I continue?
Yeah, I think by nature, the pantser is more, or pantser is more like, well, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I've killed, I would say 4 or 5 characters through the years of 25 novels that were not, there was no plan to kill them. And in fact, it's really fun because when I turn it into the publisher, I'll almost always get an email like, why are they dead? This was not in the synopsis that you turned in. And but it's entertaining reading, right? Like, if I don't know they're going to die, then you definitely wouldn't guess it. I know you didn't guess it because I didn't guess it. You don't want to just kill for killing's sake. I hope people watch this whole thing, don't just tune in for that sentence.
We're going to get some great sound bites out of this one.
Right. But you need to think what you're thinking through is you're upping the conflict. If you begin to get bored with your story, you don't have enough conflict. That's almost always the problem. And so by doing something extreme, you will automatically write in conflict, and then dealing with that, how your characters deal with that, then continues the plot of the story, the character arcs of the story, and it becomes really wonderful. Probably the best one I ever did was a book called Listen, and that's
the one I was thinking of. I'm sitting here going, yeah, I read that book. I know she killed somebody, and it totally shocked me when I was like, what?
Yep, it was a good call on my part, and I love that character. I love the character.
Me too.
Yes, it was hard, but it did create a lot of problems for everybody, so including me.
Yeah. Okay, here's a fun one. This is the title is Reviews in a Book. This is from Crow Valkyrie, I think it is. It says, hey, I started a new job in a library back in June, and it's helped immensely with my reading and writing. I love that. Mm-hmm. However, I found a pattern that I'm curious about. There are a lot of books, and I mean a lot, that have the entire back and sometimes most of the front covers taken up by positive reviews of the book. I've even seen one where the first 3 pages were a list of reviews before the title page even. I find this disconcerting as a reader. If I were to write a book, I don't think I'd put reviews anywhere on it. Let the piece stand for itself. And that got me thinking, though, is this kind of a, hey, look at me, good for marketing? Or is it just a way to fluff up a book and make it look better by its cover?
And yes.
Yes. Well, yeah, probably both, right? But no, ultimately, the reason I think you find it disconcerting is because you're only looking at it as a reader. As a writer, though, you also have to be a marketer, and you want people to read your book. And one of the strongest ways you can sell a book is through social proof, or getting other people to give testimonials about the fact that they love your book. And so, yeah, the reason they're putting all those reviews in there is because they're trying to prove to others that, hey, this book is awesome. It's the awesome sauce, and you got to read it, man. And so, a lot of the reasons they put them right at the front is because from places like Amazon, where you have the look inside, you're going to see those first few pages, and that way you're forced to see those reviews. The reason they put them at the back is because a lot of people, when they pick up a book and they're browsing through it, they'll start going from the back page first. That's just what we do by human nature. So reviews often show up at the front, they often show up at the back, and those are very valuable pages for marketers. In fact, when I help people format their books, we almost always put a few pages of endorsements at the front. We put their lead magnet, which is the way that people can connect with them and get on their newsletter. We'll put lists of their other books at the back. Anything we can do to help build that marketing experience, we do it. Absolutely. Y'all have anything you want to add?
It's painful, though, to go get it as an author. When you're first publishing, you have no reviews. You have nobody who's.
But you can get people to say nice things about you, right?
But the publisher's like, hey, could you go get some of these? And you're like, and I mean, sometimes you have to just go ask awkwardly authors, could you read my book? Maybe. I mean, I remember the whole situation with that, and it was not pleasant. And Kathy Tyers, who was a sci-fi Star Wars writer, was gracious enough to read my first book. And that was so fantastic, because it's just merciful, right? Because I don't know anybody. I have no name. I have nothing, and Kathy was like, I'll read it. And her name put some legitimacy onto my book. And it was very kind of her. And I try to do that now, as much as I can for other writers.
Almost every book anymore, especially on the back cover, they'll have quotes. Sometimes they started putting them on the front of the book, right? A quote from someone else, just to give it legitimacy and help with that selling of it.
And a lot of times, if you're traditionally published, or if you're going that way, before I start getting emails asking, I better put this out here, because all of the requests that I do come through publishers or agents. So I won't typically do one that comes through like my social media. But you can give a list of names to your publisher or agent, and that agent will reach out, or editor, to writers and see. So that's really the best way to do it. When you're self-published, you've really got to build your network of people and of other writers, because that's the pool that you'll be getting your reviews from.
Yeah, so it's all relationships. The marketing is relationships. The building stuff like this is all relationships. Yeah,
there is.
Okay, we got this is I think this one's gonna be punted right to Rene again. This is a fiction one. It's from PCJ16. Can you change to first person to third person perspectives? They say, I'm writing a novel series, so it's a series, and I just wanted to ask, can I have one book be in first person and the next one in third person? What do you think?
I mean, you can, I guess. You really have to have a reason, and it really has to work. I mean, that's the thing, is you can break any rule as long as you know the rule. I personally, if you're doing a series, I probably would write in deep third person rather than first person starting out, so you do have the flexibility to do whatever you want. First person is very restraining. And so, you just really limit your options, and there's no reason why you can't switch over to a deep third person point of view and still have the same effect as first person. But I mean, generally I would say probably not, but it's probably been done. I don't really know. I don't know that I have read a series that has done that, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been done. Gena, have you read a series that has switched from first person to third?
I'm trying to think if I have. Nothing is coming to mind specifically, but it seems like no, I think they usually stay within the same point of view.
I think that's typical. Yeah.
Yeah. I would question, why is the person wanting to change? What is it about? Did they say, Chris, remind me, are they going from a
No,
third person to a first person?
first person
Or
to third person, they said.
first person to third
So
person
maybe if that first person died in the
was too
novel, they can't.
limiting?
Yeah, and they definitely want to go third person.
Well, you
I
could
don't
go
know.
first person with a different character. Like if
Mhm.
you're changing total characters, you could
True.
go first person to first person. But
Yeah.
it would be jarring, and I think it would not reflect a continuous style, because third
Because it's
person to
all in the
first
same
person,
series.
right? It's all in the
Mhm.
same series, so
Yeah.
I would say no, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could.
All right. So this is from Angry Koala Bears. Of course, that's what you would expect. Okay, how do I improve my writing? I'm struggling a lot with my writing, in particular, my inability to write good dialogue scenes, but also things like my prose, and I'm just generally getting my writing and the plot of my stories to flow better. Oh, and starting my stories is sometimes something I really struggle with too, and I either don't know where to begin, or if I do begin, like I said, I strongly get a good flow. I strongly, I think, have trouble getting a good flow going, and I end up writing a boring and poor 2-chapter long dialogue scene. This is for novel writing I'm asking about, they say.
Mhm.
How do I improve my writing? Well, there's how I was trying to find what it was. I can't remember who said this quote, but they said, um, I only write when I'm inspired, but I'm inspired at 9 a.m. every morning. The idea being, don't wait for the inspiration to come, right? You've got to just make it a habit of writing. And so just sit down and write. It doesn't have to be good. In fact, many people talk about writing a first draft that's just horrible. And because you're just trying to get it all out, because it's always easier to edit something than it is to write it. Because when you're editing, you're starting with something. When you're writing, you're not starting with anything on the page. It's just that blank page. So yeah, I'd say sit down and make it a habit of writing. Try to write on a regular basis, get it out. And I think what you'll find is that as you do, among all of that material that you aren't going to use, that's no good, you're going to find these golden nuggets that you're like, oh, that though, that really worked. And that
Yeah.
will inspire you to maybe go along those lines. What do y'all do when you get stuck in your writing and you don't know what to do and you want to improve it?
Well, I think I came to that place, because I'm trying my hand at fiction, and I got a coach. That was my biggest thing. I got a coach. I realized that I wasn't going to necessarily improve on my own, and so I needed an outside perspective to help. And so that's been very valuable, and I'll throw Rene was my coach, so let me see, this way. Rene was my coach, and she's a great coach and gave me a lot to think about and really helped me in that. So I would definitely say get a writing coach if you can.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's sort of next level, and I would also encourage people to read a lot. Read a lot and read what you're writing. People say, "Well, I don't want to, steal ideas." It's like everything is stolen from something else. We're all learning from each other. So, my writing style is a combination of years of different authors I've read that I have loved this technique and seen them do this and gone, wow, they do this. And wow, they always leave me hanging at the end of the chapter. I adopt that. They adopted it from somebody else. Like none of us are just coming in with complete uniqueness. Just the first person that wrote the novel gets that prize. And the rest of us have just been watching everybody else do it. And then
Yeah.
you always bring your own unique perspective in. So reading is extremely helpful, especially for beginners. I'm really amazed how many people will start a novel who have said, well, I don't really read. I just don't think you will be able to grasp novel writing if you're not reading constantly in fiction. It's a hard craft to learn. You can learn it, but one of the biggest tools to learning is reading.
That's good.
I would also, if a writing coach, a regular writing coach is something that's really hard to find, I would recommend making it to a writers conference. I think that's it's money well spent to make it to a writers conference, to sit in those classes, to meet other writers, to listen to instructors who are going to share what they've learned. It really is worth the money. So just get that extra instruction. If you can afford the writing coach, then get the writing coach, but at least get to the writers conference. Chris and Rene and I all teach and are part of WriterCon, which is over Labor Day weekend in Oklahoma City. We've been there for several years. It's a great conference. Bill Bernhardt helps, he's kind of the mastermind behind pulling it together, and really brings in some great people as well. I mean, we do too. We bring in a lot of good speakers as well, but it's a great place to come. And also, the one thing about WriterCon that I can say is that it's a very nurturing environment. I don't think, if going to a writers conference is intimidating, come to WriterCon, because you will be welcomed no matter where you are. If you've never published a thing, come.
And hey, if you want some writers to write with on a regular basis, Gena and Rene and I host a program we call Writing Moments, and we meet together every Wednesday at noon Central Time. And what we do is we get together for 1 hour at noon, and for 15 minutes we have training, just like what you're hearing today. One of the three of us will do about a 10-minute training, and then we just write together for 45 minutes. And we have found that everyone who attends, there's only about a dozen of us right now, and we're able to get to know each other, and we're able to just get our writing done, which is really great. Yeah. Everyone says how many words they always get done, and many times you'll hear people say, wow, if it weren't for this time, I wouldn't have gotten this done this week. And so if you just find yourself kind of needing that accountability and help with someone, we would love to have you join us. Check it out at writingmoments.com, and you can join us this next Wednesday if you want. Okay. This next one, we have just a few more. This next one is from Curator 557. They say, please help me ease my pain. I'm working with a company called Writers Republic, and they're helping me with publishing my book. But now I'm conflicted because I looked on Beware Writers. It's a website that tells you whether a publishing house is legit or not. And they are on the list. But it seems like they're legit because they made a cover for me and formatted my manuscript, but I'm doubting myself now. Their emails are professional enough, and they have their location and phone number on the email. But please just rip off the bandage and tell me if I messed up or not. I'm scared they will copyright my work or keep it for themselves. Just let me know if I made a grave mistake. Who wants to take this one?
I think you should take it, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. So
you probably know the most about that.
So essentially, there are three different ways to be published. One is through a traditional publisher, which is when you see your books like on the Barnes & Noble bookshelves. One is through what they call a hybrid publisher, where you're paying someone to publish your book for you. You'll pay them to format it. You'll pay them to do the cover. You'll pay them to, many times they'll hit you up for marketing and that sort of thing, but they'll get it into the marketplace. They'll do it for you. That's the most expensive option. The traditional option doesn't cost you anything other than your marketing. And then third is self-publishing, which is where you upload your own book to Amazon, for instance. So I don't know anything about Writers Republic itself, but it sounds to me like this is probably one of those companies that's in the hybrid category, where they are doing a service for you. They're formatting your manuscript, making your cover for you, and they are going to publish it or help you get it published and put out there. Here's what you want to beware of is, one, you absolutely want to make sure the book is copywritten in your name. You should never lose the copyright. I assume you had a contract with this. Check the contract, see what it says. Most of these companies, aren't trying to do that sort of thing, but there are some that are. So you definitely want to do your due diligence if you're looking at something like this. And if it does look like it's a ripoff, get out of there. Count it as a lesson, well earned, right? You spend some money on a lesson. Whatever you do on a company, pretty much any of these hybrid publishing companies, is don't pay them to do marketing for your book. Almost all of them are going to charge way too much to do way too little. And if you want to pay someone to do marketing, there are other avenues you can take. You can hire someone to do, Facebook ads, or to do book launch for you. Find someone who has a good reputation. But I don't recommend almost any company to do any kind of marketing for you. Even the ones that say they'll build you a website, like they'll charge you way too much to do way too little on a website. And you can find your own web developer and do a better job. So overall, I hope you didn't get ripped off with this. Like I said, I don't know about this particular company, but if you did, just count it as a lesson learned. If you didn't, you just know that you've probably paid a lot already to have everything started, and just make sure you don't pay too much more for unless it's something you really want them to do. But hopefully they'll just go ahead and publish it to Amazon or something for you. The other thing I'll add on to this, though, is that like publishing to Amazon is not that hard to do yourself. And if you're paying someone to do it, the writers that I've worked with that have had a book published through publishers like this, they find it difficult to get the manuscript back so that they can just publish it themselves. Because even though they still own the copyright, it's all entangled in this web of red tape with this hybrid publisher. And they almost always wish they hadn't done it. So I hope you didn't mess up with this. If you did, you just learn from it, and just know that all of us as writers have so many books in us, right? Don't feel like that one manuscript or that one thing, because it's messed up now you're in trouble. No, you've got so much more in you, and just count it as a lesson learned. Y'all have anything you want to add?
I would say most of the time when I hear people who have been really unhappy with the hybrid publishers, it's because they have purchased the marketing. They spent a lot of money on the marketing. So I don't know, as far as like the marketing goes for this particular company, I don't know if you've purchased a package with that, but I always encourage people, don't just ask the publisher what they're going to do with you or do for you. Ask them what they have successfully done for other clients. So
and
I
then
don't
contact
care.
those clients and find out if it's really true. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
So I don't. No, you're right. I don't care if you're going to put my book on your website or on your newsletter or somewhere else. I want to know how many book sales have come in the past from that kind of marketing. So that's what I would ask, is don't just buy a package based on what they're going to do for you. I would ask the questions about, well, how many sales did this garner? What did this mean? So and then I will do a plug for Chris. Chris also does book formatting and web design. So, if
I can help
you're
you get
looking
it on
for
Amazon for sure.
yeah. And so he works with independent authors all the time. So if you're looking for somebody who has done book formatting, cover design, uploading to Amazon, that kind of thing, hit Chris up.
And then
Because
here's generally what you want when you hire someone to help you put your book on Amazon. You want them to put it on your personal account, right? Because you want to have access to be able to do anything with that book, change the price, upload a newer version of the manuscript, all that sort of thing. Where if it's on some other company's account, especially if it's not somebody you know, if it's just like a company, that's when you got all the red tape. So make sure that you have full control. You should maintain full control over everything.
Mhm.
All right, but I do like the fact that in your in the question you said that they did a cover design and they did formatting and you liked what they did. That's what makes me think, and maybe okay. A lot of these companies, they do just fine with those things, and really where the upsell comes in, where you'll lose money, is in the marketing. So just beware that marketing. All right, this one is from The Omniscient Pig.
These
The
are all
Omniscient Pig.
entertaining names.
Yeah, I love the names. We could do a whole show just going through the names. I think it'd be fun. Okay. They say, I cannot for the life of me come up with a plot idea I deem interesting enough to flesh out and properly explore, and it's infuriating. I love writing. I want to be an author. I think I'm a capable writer. When I have a good idea, I'm just not a great generator of good ideas. I've tried different plot generating sites and nothing's grabbing me or inspiring me. I've even tried the old steal and make it your own trick. Oh, we just talked about that. But I can never make it different enough from the original to a point where I'm content with it. Any tips? What works for you? Who wants to talk to the Omniscient Pig?
Well, I would say something that's going to be, I'm going to say something controversial.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I would say that it may be your brain tricking you. It could be a form of dealing with the fear of jumping into a project. Sometimes in the creative world, because here's why I say that. This person sounds so excited to write, right?
Yeah.
Like this person seems like they are ready to go. And if they could just find that one idea, and they've had thousands and none of them are good enough. That can sometimes be a way that our brains, our creative minds cope with the overwhelming fear and looking at the huge task of starting a project. And so our brains trick us and say, well, it's not good enough, or it's not the right idea, or there's got to be a better idea out there, or you need a little more work on this. You need to outline a little more, or you know, whatever. There's a lot of ways that our minds talk us out of starting. Mm-hmm. And they can come in all forms. That's one that I've seen. You know, it's just my idea is not clever enough, so there's no reason to start it. I think that if you could overcome that fear and just start, you know, even if you only get 3 chapters into it, get 3 chapters into it. And if you're not loving the idea, then find another idea. But the next time you'll get 5 chapters into it. And the next time you'll get, you know, half a book into it. It's just finding the nerve to start, even with a bad idea. Sometimes a bad idea or mediocre idea can actually turn into a great idea. So I just wanted to point that out because I have seen that. I've seen a lot of excuses over the years, my own excuses, other writers, that we just all come up with to wait another day.
I think it's sometimes
interesting.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I was gonna say I think of it sometimes in terms of like movies. Like if you think of like Die Hard, okay, came out in the 80s. How many movies since then have been basically the same plot, right? The hero who's a cop, or a cop who's down on his luck. His family gets kidnapped by the terrorists, and he has to go rescue them, take care of everything, right? I mean, it has been redone time and time and time again. And so, despite the fact that every movie feels a little bit different because each one's a little bit unique. And so it's okay to have an idea and think, well, this seems like something someone else has done. You know, in some ways, there's nothing new under the sun. Like every romantic comedy has kind of the same, you know, plot points in it. And that's okay because you're going to bring your own flair to what you're writing. And so just get it down, write it. And then again, it's always easier when you're in the editing process than in the writing process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just talking about the fears, you know, I was talking at the beginning of this that I've been reading about the different fears that writers encounter. And I think that's a really interesting one that we have that is pretty universal. This idea that are we good enough? Are our ideas original enough? Those kind of things. And it really is kind of this self-sabotaging practice that we all have to overcome. And that's the thing that I think is kind of liberating about it, is to realize you are not alone. Those kind of fears are universal. Every author questions whether their book is original enough or interesting enough, and that's fiction, nonfiction, it doesn't matter. Am I bringing something new to the table? Am I a good enough writer? And those kind of things can really undermine you as a writer, and it can really stunt you. So, but I would just encourage you that one, what you are feeling is completely natural. It is completely universal. I don't know authors that haven't had those moments of doubt. If they're out there, God bless you, because you've got the golden ticket that the rest of us have not gotten. So you just have to push through it. But understand when you're sitting there and those thoughts come to your mind that, oh, it's just not good enough. Think, okay, wait a minute. Everybody thinks it's not good enough. Everybody. I would imagine that, the famous writers, Shakespeare was probably sitting at his desk going, you know what? I'm just not sure about this Romeo and Juliet thing.
He said, I'm just going to kill them off.
I'm just going to kill them. Yeah. I mean, there's probably all through the ages that authors have wrestled with that. So keep going and take your bad idea and just keep working with it. Don't give up on it.
Well, this has been awesome. We've answered I think about 10 questions here. That's what I brought with us today. There's a lot more where that came from. So we'll have to we're going to do these on a regular basis. If you've enjoyed this kind of teaching, this is what we do every weekend, Writing Moments, which you can find out more about at writingmoments.com. That's where me and Gena and Rene all get together with a group of writers, and we write our individual stories together. And we have about 15 minutes of teaching and training, just like what you're hearing here today. And then following that, we all just sit down and we write for 45 minutes. We use what's called the Pomodoro technique that kind of keeps us accountable, keeps us going. And it's just a small commitment. It's every Wednesday at noon Central. And it's just a lot. We have a lot of people who take their lunch to use this time. Some people who just, we've had people call in from the airport or their car because they don't want to miss the teaching, or they just want to be in and be part of it. And so we'd love to have you join us if you want to join us. So that's at writingmoments.com. It's super fun, and we think you'd enjoy it.
And can I add something to that, Chris? Because I did get one bit of feedback for us that people were they had been thinking about joining Writing Moments, but they were nervous because they were novice writers. They were not professional writers, and they just didn't know if they would, if they were good enough. It's the same fear again.
Yeah.
Am I good enough to join a writers group? And I just want to let you know, I don't care if you've been writing for years. You're welcome. If you've never written anything, if you write longhand, if you write on a computer, I don't care. Just come on. You are welcome. And we would love to go alongside you.
We have people who are with us that are beginners, very much beginners. We have others who are very seasoned in their careers. Here's the thing. This is different than a lot of writing groups. We're not doing critiques or anything like that. We're doing training, and we're doing writing time together. The whole idea is that we just want to have a time where we can say, I'm putting that on my calendar and I'm not going to miss it, because it's easy too often. It's easy to just miss our writing time, right? Don't write today because I got too much else going on. This is a way you can say, look, I know there's some other people who are out there waiting for me to join them, and so I'm going to jump in the group. We do it online. It's real easy to do. And so check it out at writingmoments.com. I think you'll find it a very welcoming and fun group. All right. Well, until next time, this is Chris, Gena, and Rene. Y'all have any closing statements?
I hope this was helpful.
Yes, keep writing. All right. See y'all later. Bye-bye.